All right, good morning. Oh, okay. I think, just give me a minute. I think I have. Okay, so welcome again to the Software Testing Bootcamp. My name is Darlington, and today we'll be going forward with our test training. And in this training session, we'll be focusing on test execution and reporting. So last week, I remember, or last 2 weeks rather, we had a very interesting exercise where we got really hands-on testing the pickaxe software, and I was really happy and impressed with the results we got there. But we're gonna keep going. We're gonna see a lot of stuff that we've talked about will also uh, be repeated in this chapter of the training. And we're going to also see if we're able to finish up to the end today, which I doubt actually. I think this section will take 2 lessons, but we might also get to do some small tests as well. Now, this chapter focuses on two critical or crucial phases in software testing. So we're going to talk about software test execution. Sorry, my slide is a little bit off. So we're going to talk about test execution, which is running the test cases step by step to validate the software against requirements. So we see that we even did that last week, where you guys actually used the tests that you wrote to test an actual software. And we're also going to be talking about test reporting, which is logging the outcome, tracking defects, and sharing insights with stakeholders. And that is also something you guys worked on last time because you guys created the test reports, and we're also going to see examples of how these test reports are going to look like. And these phases are actually very, very crucial, uh, where all the planning, analysis, and also the documentations will be coming from. So, what is test execution? Uh, just give me a minute. Um, just take a quick look. Yeah. So text execution is just basically when you run the planned test cases that you have actually created, and you do this by following it step by step, observing the actual versus the expected results. So that means like if you have to test if a button is going to be green. So let's take an example of pickaxe again. So we're going to go to pickaxe. So we're going to go to pickaxe. So let's try to simulate something interesting here. So let's log out from this. So if your test case was to test if the registration button is should be green, so and the observed situation now is I don't know, is this orange? So you want to compare it. So, I mean, before you test it, you're gonna check, okay, this is the actual situation, and you're gonna test it. I'm just gonna hack the code a little bit online. Let's see, what can we do with it? Can I change the color? Theme. So let's change the color. Okay, so let's say you want to make sure that there is no color around it. That is just a text test. So the previous, so the way it was versus the way it is now. So you're gonna make sure, okay, what is the situation right before the f- the the feature was being added, and what is the current feature? And as long as the current feature meets the requirements, that's the way you can also uh, you know sign off on that test that it worked. Um, I'm kind of hearing myself. Yeah, okay, that was better. So also, uh, reporting bugs and defects are also part of the activity or some of the things you have to do when executing your test. Validating that each feature works as per requirement. So remember, we always use our requirements to write our tests. And when you're testing or when you're executing your test, you want to make sure that your um, the stuff you're testing meets the exact requirements that is stated. Um, there are also different types of testing. There is regression test, performance test, security test. I think we've talked about some of this uh, before. We talked about smoke testing. We talked about exploratory testing. So there are just different types of tests. And remember, I don't know if you guys can remember what regression test is. Can you guys remember what regression test is? If you remember, you can raise up your hand. All right, Binto, go ahead.
I think regression testing is when you run a test to see if the new development in the software has broken anything that was previously working.
That's it.
So,
That's it, the 100. Thank you very much. So you see that most of the time when a new feature comes in, the first thing you want to do is very essential. You want to perform a regression test. You want to go to the website. You want sometimes you might
uh,
a
a
developer.
developer.
Let me mute Sumbo. Sumbo is noisy. Sumbo, you want to say something? Oh, I just muted you now. Don't worry. So sometimes a developer might actually fix something. Let's say inside the software. So let's say we log in now. So maybe the fix is somewhere in here, but in your regression test, you realize that maybe when you perform your regression test, you realize that you can't even log in. Maybe you try to log in and it gives you an error. So that means something that was working before, after they deployed it, it broke something. So regression tests are very important. And of course, there are regression tests on different levels. So you want to, first of all, when a new feature comes out, you want to go in, just perform some regression tests around the area where the test is going to happen. Also from start to like normally you want to do like um what you call it, a full customer happy flow where you can log in, add something, sign out, something like that. So yeah, regression tests are very important. So there are different types of tests. Security tests. There's also security tests, which probably later I'll be showing you guys an example what a security test is. A security test is just basically what are some of the things people can do to break into your system. So you might hear words like SQL injection. Or pen testing. So SQL injection is more like for forms. So like this login, there's a trick that if a software engineer doesn't know how to design a software properly, you can use some very tricky and sneaky code to either get into the database or delete people's work or delete records from the database. So let's say, let me just look for some SQL injection examples. So even if you go on internet, you can see some interesting codes for it. So let's see. So this is one. Let me see. Yeah, you have like code snippets like this. You can just take it, put it into your input field, and see what's going to happen. So you see, like already, I'm securing this site already. It's not even going to accept anything that's not an email. But let's try it on the password area, and you see, so this software is secured because it didn't even allow that SQL injection code to go in. So there, if you go on the internet, you'll find a lot of these tricky codes. You can use it to test people's websites. Sometimes, if it works, that means you break into the website, and the website is not really secure. So that is also part of like security testing and stuff. Yeah, so there are different types of tests, but right now we're just going to focus on basic functional tests. You want to make sure that the features that are specified are actually what the users are seeing. Um, just give me a minute. Let me see. I think I'm going too fast. Test reporting. All right, let's stick with this one. Okay, so what else? Let me see. Oh, all right, test reporting. What is test reporting? Uh, Once a test is executed, uh, you should have a document that comes out that shows which test passed and which test failed. You also want to log of the defects that went on or that happened. And of course, you want to communicate these results with the stakeholders and also the uh, with the software team developers actually. So I'll show you guys an example. So like I told you guys, I work with Obi. So remember we do all our tests on Jira, right? I mean our stuff we work on Jira. So if I go to Jira now, so you see our work here. This is where the last work we did.
Swallow what you have in your mouth.
Okay.
Jesus. Move on.
All right, so this is our Jira board. So if we go to the sprint, you would see that we have some tests here and you can see there's a bug here. So when you are performing your tests, so let's say you're performing your tests during your test reports, when you finished, the tests that fail, if you're working on softwares like this, the normal thing is you come in here and you register it as a bug. So just like this one. And we're going to talk about STRs. STRs means steps to reproduce, steps to reproduce. And what you do with that is you want to also communicate properly. Okay, what did I do? What did I click? What did I enter that generated this bug so that the developers can follow that same steps and see what is actually wrong and be able to fix it. So generally, you want to communicate that using your development system, or sorry, your management system like Azure. Uh, I also have Jira. So like I told you guys, I work with OB. When I work with OB, I use Jira. Jira is very similar um, to Azure. It's basically the same thing. So if we look at our work like recently, so this is our work for this week, for this sprint rather. And if you look down here, you see Obina registered a bug. So he gave it a title, and kind of like he called me, which is a stakeholder. He called me, communicated the issue, told me what was wrong. Some of the calculations were not right. Generally, what you want to do in the description here is also to put out the steps to reproduce. Like, okay, this is what I did, and this is how I did it. But he communicated that with me directly, and then I just told him, okay, no need to write the steps to reproduce because I understand it now. Just paste the images of it. So he did that, and when he did that yesterday, I was able to log in, I reprogrammed a couple of stuff, and the calculations became correct, or they came to be the way they're supposed to be. I don't know if I have a very good example here. Um, yeah, so you see it's calculating a lot better. You see the numbers are quite good. So that's basically what happens uh, when it comes to communicating results with the team and the stakeholders through your test reports. So you can do that. First of all, you have to do that anyway using your management board, and then you want to communicate it with your developers and sometimes even your stakeholders. So test reports is very important. If you also remember, we also did uh, something very similar during our last session. Um, So why are these phases very important? The phases that you see here that we just talked about in this test report, so documenting outcome, logging defects, and communicating results, why are they important? First, they ensure quality. So you want to make it possible for the developers to be able to reproduce the bugs, to be able to verify if the features work as they need to, and also test performance, right? It also supports decision making, so it helps the stakeholders to decide whether or not that product should be released to production, if it should be delayed, or it needs some extra work. Um, Also, visibility, it maintains visibility. So having a report shows what is done and what is still pending and what is being picked up and what's not, right? Uh, Identify risks as well is also one of the reasons why it is very important. Um, so the last one is it enables continuous improvement. So when you have a test report, it makes it possible for us to be like, okay, or for the team to be like, okay, even if we cannot pick up this issue right now, we're going to move this issue to the next sprint, and we're going to keep developing and fixing more issues as they come. So yeah, these phases are very crucial. It's not just okay for you to just find a bug and not do anything about it. No, when you find an issue during your testing, you want to document it. You want to say, okay, this one passed, this one failed. You want to log the defect, and you want to communicate the results. Are there any questions so far? Okay, let me see. No hands up. So now we're gonna dive in. I'm gonna talk about chapter, what are these areas we're gonna cover in this chapter. So this chapter we're gonna is gonna be broken down into four parts, right? Let me see. Yeah. So in the first part, we're gonna be talking about test execution, which we just had a preamble there. What are you gonna learn? You're gonna learn how to prepare and execute test cases, which we have already started doing. We did that last week. We're gonna learn how to manage execution. We're gonna have learn tips for dealing with unexpected issues, and we're gonna learn how to prioritize uh, when time is limited, because sometimes certain software needs to be in production like really quickly. You have to learn how to prioritize time as a software tester. Then on the second section, which is section 4.2, we're going to talk about the defect lifecycle. We're going to explore the life cycle of a defect, from discovering a bug or a defect to the resolution. We're going to also learn about defect states. These defect states it comprises of new, assigned, in progress, resolved, or closed. So I can just open up Azure again for you to have more of a visual understanding of that, what that means. So let's take, for example, this is the bug we found, right? We registered. Um, Let me start on afresh. So I'm gonna create a new bug. So I'm gonna come here. I'm gonna say add bug. I'm gonna say test. Maybe this one a test bug. Let me just open it up. Test bug. Now you see this particular bug has different states. So if you click on it, you see here you have states. That means what is the current state of this bug. So this is the first time probably you as a tester found the bug. You're gonna say there is a bug on the login page. Then you do your steps to reproduce, STP, STR, sorry, steps to reproduce. You're gonna say let's just do something simple. Go to pickaxe.com. Let's number it. Click on the login button and then enter login credentials, and then you put here expected. You say login to control panel. You say actual, and error page is displayed, and the user cannot log in. So this is just basically it, steps to reproduce, right? So I as a tester, or you as a tester, you found a bug on the login page that prevents a user from logging in. Then you create your steps to reproduce. Remember, STR means steps to reproduce. Steps to reproduce. So it should just make sense. If it's just it's a sentence, huh? Steps to reproduce. So if you think about it, it sticks to your brain. What are the steps that one can take to reproduce the error? That's what STR is. Sorry, I keep saying STR. So you say go to Pickaxe, click on the login button, enter login credentials, and what you expect is that the user should log into the control panel, but what is actually happening is an error is being displayed, right? So when you register it, the first state of this bug is new, meaning that nobody has picked it up, you just registered it. So if you look at it, it has state of new. Then take for example, you're now assigning it to Darlington. So I'm just gonna say, okay, this bug gets assigned by the team to Mr. Darlington. Now it's on the Darlington's name. Then I start working on the bug. So let's say I start working, I create a task, I'll say analysis. I'm gonna analyze the bug, analysis. So it's under my name as part of the team. And then I change the status to active. So you see that means I'm working on it. So you see now the state has changed. So it goes here. Uh, I create another task. I'll say fixed bug or something like that. I'll say fixing bug. Let's make it fixing because fixing bug. So I create another task. I say, okay, now I'm busy fixing. I finished analyzing. I'm busy fixing, and the state of the bug is still active. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done with the fixing, right? And a tester needs to test it again. Test. So, and I'm going to assign this test now to say, let me assign it to, assign the test to Ibimisa. So, sorry, I'll assign it to TT, right? Binto. So TT now is gonna be like is gonna be the one to test it. So I'm gonna now move the my state to resolved. See that? I'm gonna move it to resolved. That means I've resolved it, and then I'll be waiting for TT to come in and test it again. So if TT picks it up, TT is gonna move this to active. So TT tests it and like, oh, the bug is solved. Then she's gonna move this to done, and then come back here and say the bug has been closed and resolved. So you see that this bug went through different stages, different states, right? And uh, that's what we mean when we talk about the life cycle of a defect. So it's going to move through different states where you have new, assigned, in progress, resolved, closed, and much more. And we're also going to learn about best practices for defect management and tracking. Uh, on the third section, we're going to look at generating test reports. So we're going to cover types of reports, summary reports, defect reports, execution reports. We're going to look at all that, and we're going to also understand report types and key matrices, right? And the fourth section, we're going to look at a hands-on exercise where we get to actually do something. So we're going to execute test cases on a sample application. We're going to log the defects that we found, and we're going to create a complete test report from, from the test session. And this would actually be more of a simulation of, real world experience, and you're going to build more practical confidence. Now, remember, we already did this. I threw you guys in the deep water last 2 weeks, and it's actually very interesting and quite exciting to do, right? Now, um, by the end of this whole chapter, what I expect you guys to be able to do is you should be able to systematically execute test cases. You should be able to log and manage defects. You should be able to create test reports that inform decisions. You should be able to use Matrix to track test qualities and the progress. And you should also be able to apply the skills you've learned in the real world. So we are going to be taking on this stuff. So without wasting so much time, we're going to start. Oh, there's also a small note here. Let me see. Yeah, yeah, I think we already mentioned this part. So we're going to start with the first part, which is test execution. So this session will focus on how to execute test cases properly, sorry, and how to manage the process effectively. And it's also going to cover both the technical steps and the real world best practices based on industry standard, right? Now, uh, the first part, okay, some of the steps in executing test cases include one, reviewing and finalizing test cases. So before executing, you want to ensure that you want to ensure the test cases, right? You want to ensure that they are complete and up to date. So you if you get it, like if the developers have built something and you want to start testing, you want to make sure, okay, is this the latest version? Because you can imagine a test case continues to evolve because new features keeps adding. So you want to make sure you're using the latest test case, not one that was like used last month. Because if you're using a test case that was used last month, you probably will be testing the wrong thing because maybe new features have been added. So you want to make sure you're using a test case that is complete and up to date. You want to also make sure that your test cases are reviewed by your peers. If you adjusted the test case, if you added some new stuff, you want to make sure that they are reviewed by your fellow testers or your developers, depending on how your team is set up. You also want to identify gaps, right? When you're reviewing your test case, what are gaps? You want to look at, are there any missing edge cases? Are there some tests that are not, that are misaligned? Maybe you're supposed to be testing A, but you're getting yeah, like maybe the title says test the login page, but the test itself is talking about the registration page. So that's kind of a misalignment. So you want to make sure that, okay, what the test says is testing is actually what is being tested. And also, yeah, if you find an area that is not tested or is not part of the test case, you want to also identify that and probably add it, right? And finalizing test case is also like getting the green light before actually you start testing. You want to make sure that, okay, the test case you have in hand is complete. It has gone through these reviews. You are sure that this is the exact test case you should be using for the test. I remember I'm saying this because in the ideal world, you'll be working together with within a team with developers, with sometimes even other testers, and you want to make sure that. And you remember, if you're working with other testers, all of you are busy testing the same. I mean, busy updating your test cases. So you want to be careful not to use an outdated one. Now, the other step is also to set up a test environment. So you can remember I told you guys that the Pigax website, we I set up a test environment, which I showed you guys. This environment is only accessible to me and to some of you that I already gave access to. I think I gave access to all of you, but it's based on your IP address anyway. So this is a test environment. When you are testing in any company, it's always good to make sure you more or less demand for a test environment. Remember, I'll just ask you guys again, what is a test environment? Does anyone know what a test environment is? Or what do we mean by test environment? You can raise up your hand. What is a test environment? All right, Ifeanyi?
A test environment is similar to the main product, but a separate URL where testers can work on,
Exactly.
but that doesn't
Yeah.
affect the real app.
So it's so you have something else to say?
Oh, I wanted to say the environment before the
Yeah.
production.
It it's it is similarly the environment before production, but let me sketch it out for you again. So uh so we have let me sketch out the type of environment or the different environments I have for Pigax, right? So I have a dev environment. Now, so we say dev. I wouldn't call this. I'll explain this. Then we have a test, and we have the production, right? Binto, do you know what production is? When we say production, you're muted. Titi, are you still here?
Can you?
So when we talk about production environment, do you know what that means? Yeah, yeah, I'm talking
That's
to
me,
Titi.
right?
Yeah.
I think. Uh, I think production is when it goes, I don't know, I want to use
Exactly.
when it goes
Yeah,
live. I
that's
don't
the
know if
right
that's
term.
the word
When
to
it goes
use.
live, when it's actually there for everybody to use, right? So this is basically how my setup is for Pigax. My dev environment, however, is my local computer. I work on my local, but this is not ideal. In most cases, you have a dedicated uh, uh, dev environment, but my own current dev environment is my computer. And the interesting thing is, everything you have in production has to be also in the test and the dev environment. And what are some of the things you have in production? In production, you definitely have a database. You might also have like an API that is talking to, and just think of all the things that you need to make sure that this application works in production. You need to have exactly the same things in the test. So the database is a very popular one, and you also have to make sure you have them also in production, right? So this is a, uh, a kind of like a release street, or like different stages that a software goes through before it gets to production. So if dev is done, they release it to test. If the testers finish testing, they release this to production. Now let me come to Chinonso's answer. Chinonso says like the test environment is the environment before production. Now I'll have to correct you on that. It is the test environment before production for my website, for my application, for Pigax, and also maybe for a lot of companies. But when you go into a company, that is when you're going to really figure out what is what. But in most cases, in company, a standard company that follows software development life cycles and release best practice release strategy. This is not the entire stages that it needs to pass. So now let me show you guys. We're going to also talk about that in this test. Let me sketch that out. Let me see. Can I clean this out? Yes. So this is like if you work for companies, like I worked for a company called like for KVK. I worked for KVK. I worked for Duo. These are very big companies, and they actually follow the steps. So of course they have a dev environment. They have a test environment, and they have an environment they call UAT, and then they have production. Now, does anybody know what UAT stands for? Or have you heard it before? So remember, we have. All right, I see Constance is raising up her hand. So Constance, give us something.
I think that's user acceptance
Exactly.
testing.
Thank you. Uh, Dimitar, is that the same thing you had in mind? User
Yeah.
acceptance tests. Good. So get used to this word. You're gonna hear this word a lot. I think in Dutch they call it. If you work in Holland, they call it gat. So for those of you that might be coming to Holland to work, maybe like Constance or Sumbo or Chinoso, if you hear gat omgeving, now gat means gebruikersacceptatie test. This is just a translation of this. Gebruiker means user, acceptatie is acceptance, test is test. So gat. So if you're working in a Dutch company, you probably hear the gat environment, right? Great. Now, does anyone know the difference in this? Let me do something else. Just give me a minute. Yeah. Okay. Great. So UAT, right? Now, for big companies, this is the flow. The flow is me as a dev. This is my computer. I work on my computer. Remember, I told you for Pigax, my dev is my computer. But in a big company, logically, they have this setup. So I program in my computer. which means I also have the same set of database, all of this. I have that on my computer as well, locally installed. Now I work on my computer, I fix the bug, I create a new feature, and then I deploy it to the developer environment. This is the developer dev. And this dev, a lot of times, is very similar to the test. It's not a lot of times, it's often similar, but maybe the data is different. So I deploy it here. When I deploy it, I test it. This dev environment is for us. It's all for us developers. It's not for testers. Testers don't come in here. We deploy our stuff here and we test it. Oh, did what we did, what we decided to build, is it working? When we uploaded it, did it not? Did it crash? Did it work? If it works, we're like, okay, fine, it works. Then we deploy. We move it to tester to the test environment. Then the testers now test the stuff. So we're already familiar with the test environment. It's the same thing as I have in Pickaxe. You as a tester go in there, check if what was being built meets the requirements. If it meets the requirements, it gets the testers give it a thumbs up, and then it's being sent to the UAT environment. The UAT environment, there are also testers here. So you have a team of testers for UAT environment, and you have another team of testers for the test environment. But sometimes, if the company is not very big or if they don't have a lot of money, it might be the same testers. But generally, it's not a good idea to have the same testers testing on the test environment and the UAT environment. The reason for that is if the same testers that are testing tests are testing UAT, there's a very high chance they might not see the mistakes that they overlook. So a tester might overlook or forget or not see an error here, but the error will be found here by the UAT testers. So that's why it's generally not a good idea for the same testers for tests to be testing UAT, because if I'm the one that tested on the test environment, I could just come here and be like, I've tested this in Java. Next, 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 next. But if it's a different tester, he's going to come with a fresh eye, he's going to come with whole mindsets. And a lot of times they might be able to find issues that the normal testers did not find. I see Obi has a question.
Yeah, the testers, the UAT team testers, what do they really do that is different from what the
That's a very good
testers do?
question. Very, very good question. So before I answer that, first of all, I would like to ask you guys a question. You guys might not know it, but some of you might know it, just like you guys already figured out what UAT is. What is the difference between a UAT environment and a test environment? Do you guys know? Why why would you be testing something that you've tested already and you're testing it again, but just because the name is different, which is also maybe something similar to what Obi is right asking. So Ifeanyi is gonna help us.
I think the final stage to production,
Yes,
before production.
yes, is the final step. That's true. But why is it different? What is different from test and UAT?
I think they're basically doing the same thing, but to make sure that some errors are not missing, since they are being tested by different.
That's correct. That's correct. But there's one crucial point. Okay. So I'll just give you guys. Oh, Constance wants to try.
I'm not sure, but I think the user acceptance UAT environment, they check if it meets the user requirements, but in testing they don't really do that. They just test to see if there's bugs or something.
Mm,
I
I
don't know.
would I would argue that test also is testing the same thing. You're also testing to see if the feature works, and somehow you're close, but I think you just need to word it different. You need to word it different. All right, Sumo wants to try. Sumo, oh, this is exciting. Sumi, give it a try. You're muted.
Yeah, I think the test environment is for the owners, while the UAT is for who the what do I call it now? The app is being designed for the users, how what a user is going to do, what they're going to look for, while the test
Okay.
environment is for the owner. If if what's been developed meets the
Okay. So who do you
requirements.
mean? What do you mean by owner? The word owner.
I'm going to use an example of
Okay.
pickaxe. The I don't know the exact words or terms, but the
Okay.
owner of
The
the
okay. You mean
product,
like the stakeholder?
owner,
Okay.
yeah. So for testers is to check if what has been developed meets the requirements from the product owners or from the stakeholders, while the UAT is for those that are going to use um
Okay.
the
So let me
products.
ask you a question, just to poke you a bit, Subo. Does it mean that the requirements for tests for that the testers are using on the test environment is different from the requirements that the UAT guys will be using in terms of, we have our, I told you guys, when something new comes in, you ask what are the requirements. The requirements get state based on the requirement the tester tests on test. Are we saying that it's going to be a different requirement for the UAT, or you think it's still going to be the same? What do you think?
I think it's going to be the same and more from a
Okay.
user's
All
perspective.
right. So just we're gonna take all your answers because all your answers are correct in some ways, but also slightly wrong in some ways. But let me just give you the real tea here, what the difference is, coupled with some of the things you said. Right? The major difference between a UAT and a test is one word: data. And what does that mean? It's kind of confusing, right? Now, I'll explain that. Now, a test environment, right? So let me show you guys my test environment so you can understand because I want to use real examples for this. Let me show you guys my test environment for Pigax, right? So I'm gonna go to Pigax. This is my test. Are you guys seeing this page behind is my test, right? Check this out. I'm gonna go to my documentation. I just designed my documentation, right? Check this out. I went to my documentations, loading. This is my documentation. Look, there's nothing here, okay? As if that's not enough, let's go to blogs. I go to blogs. Look at my blog. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing? If you click on this, it comes here. You see this? See, look at my text. Look at my. Did you just notice that this is just rubbish? I'm just using it to test if I'm just testing if it works. I just typed rubbish. I just put it there, and my test passed. Why did it pass? Because when I did that, yeah, it created a title. When you click on it, it's working, and I saw my content. My test has passed. But this is test environment. The data is just test data. I can write as much rubbish as I want. I can do anything I want because I'm just testing if something is working. If I also log in, let's say, is there anything we can find in our login? Let's see. Maybe I can give you guys more example. Sorry that I have this stuff. It might be confusing your eyes. But do I have more rubbish? Yeah, let's go to my pics, right? Okay, so okay. Unfortunately, I have to clean this thing so you guys will see. So check out my data. My pig name I put baby two, pig ABC, pig O1. It's just I just want to test. Is it working? That's typically what happens in a test environment. So the testers are just busy trying to test is if the functionality is working. But on the UAT, that's why it's called user acceptance test. They use the exact copy. Let me put it like this. They use 95% of the exact copy of data that exists in production. That's what they use here. And why is this important? This is important because sometimes What the users are actually doing on the webs on the production on the actual site is different from what the testers are doing. And sometimes a typical example could be maybe a user, maybe some users. Let me see. Let me go back to this. Maybe some users have pigs that they register with. Let me put it like this. Maybe there are some users that register their pig like this. Uh, pig, something like this. Maybe there are some companies that actually have pigs that the names are this. But a tester would not. If most testers will come to add pig and they're not going to think of this, they're just going to write a pig name and it's going to work. But maybe when it gets to UAT testers know that they actually look at the production data. They're like, okay, what are the kind of things people in production do? They copy those things and they use them as their inputs to see if this thing actually works the way the users use it, not the way the testers use it, but the way the users use it. And maybe you'll be surprised when you do this, you will now find that this will be rejected by the system. The system will say, oh, I don't understand this name. And you see that a tester didn't catch that because a tester just basically read this and say, oh, this is name. I'm going to call it pig ABC. Whereas in the UAT testers look at the data in the database of the production and say, okay, what are people actually doing? They copy that and they use that for testing. And sometimes you would find that errors will occur there because the users use the system in a very different, funny way than testers use it or than developers use it. And that's very funny. You would actually see a software that they wrote. You see somebody who just write here gender clearly. You just put gender clearly, but you'll be surprised a user will come here and type non-binary. Yeah, of course, you guys know that's a thing now because yeah, we have male, female, and non-binary. So you want to look. So that means if I come here now, I can't find non-binary. Non-binary is not here. But the UAT testers will figure that out because the production people are using that term or doing that. So they will report that as a bug. Like, okay, we found something on UAT which is an issue. Non-binary needs to be there. We don't see it. So the most important thing about UAT is almost an identical copy of production, and they use production data to test to see if what the users are putting in will be accepted in that version. And if it's not accepted, it goes back. Now, there's also a very, very big issue that UAT always struggles with, and I'm going to tell you guys very early in this training is data privacy. Data privacy, because think about it, a lot of companies gave you as the company their data, their personal data, their their address for you to use, for you to store, and you actually told them that you as a company told them that this your data will not be shared, it will not be leaked. But you are now saying in UAT we have to use production data to test, right? So UAT always struggle with that. That is why in a lot of companies we do what we call privacy masking or something like that, where we take certain data, but data such as names, actual names, address, telephone numbers, we kind of like have a software that masks it or rewrites it because those are privacy data. So when we copy data from production to our UAT, when we see those certain data that we've marked, we just change them. Like, okay, this is a name, this is private. So instead of saying, um, um, say Harry Locust, since that's the name the user put in, and we as a company has promised that we're going to be careful with the data, we're just going to change that Harry Locust to Tarzan Mohan or something. So we do that kind of cleanup before moving the data to UAT. Then there are some other data that don't need cleanup, maybe like numbers and stuff. Anything that is not privacy sensitive, a lot of times you just move it that same way you see it in production, you move it to UAT and use that to test. So again, UAT is the same data that you find in production that you use for testing in the UAT. Again, if you work for any company that is using exact copy of privacy data, it's always a good thing. If you want to show off, just say, hey guys, I mean, are we not breaking the privacy rules here? We have to mask this data. This is not safe. And I'm sure your product owner will give you a thumbs up like, yo. And they get scared already when you say that. And they start saying, okay, help us. How can we do this? And a lot of time for that masking stuff, you work with developers. Developers can write softwares that will make sure that when you're copying the data from production database to UAT, it kind of like masks those privacy data. And sometimes you also have automated tools that do that. So this is the basic release street. We call that release street. I think is that it in Dutch we say release strat. Release street. That's we have development, test, UAT, and production. If it passes UAT, and UAT is really strict. UAT a lot of times they're really strict. If one thing goes wrong, it doesn't go to production. So yeah. So if it gets past UAT, then it's clear for production. So I know we digressed a bit, but very interesting stuff. I want you guys to just keep these words in your mind so that when we talk about it again, more in depth in the training, you'll be familiar with it. But it's also nice to see some of you already have come across the word UAT. So let's go back to where we stopped. Can we take a break? 5 minutes break, so you guys can relax your brain a bit, so I don't give you guys a brain overload. All right. So 5 minutes. I'm gonna put a timer. Is that okay? Or you guys want to keep going on? If you want a 5 minutes break, thumbs up. Okay. Constance wants a 5 minutes break. Great, great, great. So I'm gonna put a timer for 5 minutes. So please be sure to be back in 5 minutes so we can wrap up. Okay. Let me just put on the timer. Pull more focus. I'm gonna put 5 minutes. Short break. All right. All right. See you guys later.